Alright. Alright. Oh, where's my pen? Ah. Oh, alright. And I'm moving the slide by accident, but there's what it is. Okay. So, scoring. Right. So this is my favorite scoring table, right? The point of contention here is how do we know each of these scores? Um, how do we memorize all of this scoring table? It technically goes all the way to 110 foo, but realistically not gonna happen. I think the maximum I've seen is like 80 foo with the Ankan, or like Ankan of like actually, well, we'll talk about it later on, but like maximum I've seen is like 80 foo. So today we're going to talk about like what is foo and how can we score every single, well, all these sort of different values, and hopefully without doing much of memorization. All right. So quick recap on sort of the limit hands. So this is the Mangan and higher hands. Mangan, which is worth 8,000 points. Hanuman of 12,000 points. Baiman 16,000, and Sun Baiman of 24,000 24,000 score point hand. And yeah, these are the respective sumo values. We'll go over how we can sort of score, how we can do the sumo values and calculate the sumo values later. It's really not that easy, not that difficult, but it's basically dealer pays half of the sumo value, and then a non-dealer pays half of the dealer value. So just half and half it. Okay. So, I'm just realizing right now we probably should have had a slide of like what is foo, and that would have been pretty good. But so how do we count foo? So foo is like, I think the WRC calls it mini points or sub points, and it's technically not wrong. It's like another way of getting points, getting more points compared to Han, which is a lot more well known. Later on, we'll talk about like the relationship between Fu and Han and how that actually affects scoring. But yeah. So these are all the rules on counting Fu. So base Fu is always 20, and when you're counting Fu, you have the Fu of your hand, and you round up to the nearest 10. So this is actually incorrect. So let me actually edit this real quick. How do I get out of the slide? And yeah, so oh. All right. Yeah, so instead of nearest 10, it's round up. You need to round up to the nearest 10. All right. So we round up to the nearest 10. So if you have 22 foo, that rounds up to 30. If you have 26 foo, that also rounds up to 30. If you have 48 foo, right, that rounds up to 50. Okay, so you get 20 foo base, 10 extra foo for men's and Ron. So if you have a closed hand, no foo if you sumo while your hand is closed, but you do get 10 foo if you run someone else while your hand is closed. 2 fu for a non-ramen final weight. You also don't get fu for shampon, so technically it is only kanchan, penchan, and tanki weights that give you fu. I just like to think of if you have a single tile weight or a bad weight, then you get fu. And I don't. The reason why I didn't call it if you have bad weight you get fu is because we generally consider shampons as being bad weights, but technically the shampon doesn't give fu either. We'll talk about shampon on the next slide, but technically shampon doesn't give fu. Ramen and good weights like ramens do not give fu either. So it's only the tanki, which is the pair weight, the penchan, the edge weight, and the kanchan, which I think is called the open weight in English, give fu. 2 fu for sumo, 2 fu for yakuhai pair, and the yakuhai. So what do we mean by yakuhai? We mean, what do we mean by yakuhai? We mean tiles, honor tiles, honor tiles that give yaku. Yep. So these are the dragons, seat wind, and round wind. Oh, oops, give me a sec. I am sharing the wrong screen. Sorry about that. Okay, so, yep. So yakuhai meaning the honor tiles that give you yaku. So easy way to remember this is we get 10 fu for Menzen Ron. I just like to think that Menzen Ron is base 30 fu. Every other hand is base 20 fu. And then you get 2 fu for any of these 3 categories. Pair of yakuhai, sumo, and bad weight. And as for there's like edge case scenarios for double wind. So let's say if you're on the east seat and the round wind is east. The round wind is east. Then a pair of easts can either give 2 or 4 fu. So it could be 2 for the seat wind and +2 for round wind, and you get the fu for both of them. On online clients, it's +4. The thing that's everyone's on, the thing that is on everyone's mind at the moment, which is WRC, it will be +2. This just depends on what rule set you are playing on. Okay, so just to recap, 20 fu, 30 fu on Menzen Ron, and then you get +2 for all of these little categories. Basically, anything that is kind of special, I guess, is +2 fu. Okay. Next slide. All right, and then we get to triplets. How do we calculate triplets? Fu, again, it starts at +2. +2 is like the base value of everything that we start. And then we multiply it by 2 for any special case. So what do I mean by special case over here? I mean, if it's 1, 9, or honor, then it gets doubled, or no, it gets doubled. Or, if it's closed, it gets doubled. So as you can see, if it's a middle tile, open, it starts at 2 fu. If it's an honor or a terminal, it gets multiplied by 2. If it's closed, it gets multiplied by 2. And then they can be closed and terminal and honor, and that also gets multiplied by 2 as well for multiplied by 4 in total for +8. And then for Khan, it's a multiply by 4. How I like to remember it is, again, you start at +2 base, because everything else that gives you Fu starts at +2. And then you multiply by 2 for any of these special cases that I mentioned. It's either closed or it's a terminal honor. And then for Khan, I like to go the opposite way and then say a closed Khan of a terminal or honor is 32 Fu, because I don't know, 32 just is easiest to memorize for me. And then I divide it by 2, going backwards. Right. Either way works. You can think of it as it multiplies by 4 from normal cases. You can just start at base 8 for a Khan and then multiply by 2. Or you can do it like me and do 32 Fu, and then divide by 2 for every time it loses a special condition. Yeah, you can choose what works for you, and then whatever works for you, you add whatever is easy to memorize for you. That's how you do it. Okay, so note, I do want to note that everything except a open triplet of a middle tile is a multiple of 4. You can see it's 4 Fu, 8 Fu, which is 4 times 2, or all of these, which are multiples of 4. So note that these are all multiples of 4, and this will become useful later on when we're talking about tips and tricks. So we mentioned before that non-Ryamen or Shampon doesn't give you Fu, and that's because when you're on a Shampon wait, so let's say you're waiting on 6-6 pin and 8-8 pin, something like that. If you're waiting on completing any of these triplets, once you draw one of these triplets and get this part, you only get the Fu of that triplet. The Shampon weight itself, being a bad weight, doesn't give you Fu. So the amount of Fu you get from a Shampon weight depends on whether or not it's open or closed, or if it's a terminal or honor. This is important. People forget this a lot. Can't see the cursor? Okay, I should probably do some laser pointer thing then. Okay, so counting through exceptions, these are just something you need to memorize. Chitoi is always 25 Fu. This is set in stone. And then open pin Fu gets 2 Fu on Ron. We'll talk about how we discuss this later on, but this is not too important. And then this one is a little bit confusing. It is closed pin Fu, doesn't get Fu on Sumo. And this is because you get Han, right? You get +1 Han for pin Fu, Yaku pin Fu. So you get your value from the Sumo using this, and you don't actually get the Fu for Sumo. We'll talk about these 2 exceptions on the next slide, actually. But basically, the only thing you really need to know is that Chitoi is 25 Fu. Alright, so how do we count Fu quickly, then? There are a few rules that we must do. Laser point in time. Okay, so pin Fu. Open pin Fu is always 30 Fu. So this is this rule over here. Open pin Fu gets 2 + 2 of Fu on Ron. Remember that we start on 20 Fu, and then using that exception rule, open pin Fu gets +2 Fu, right? So this is equal to 22 Fu for an open pin Fu, which gets rounded up to 30 Fu. So open pin Fu is always 30 Fu. Closed fin Fu is always 20 Fu on Sumo and 30 Fu on Ron. So, as I said in the slide before, again, pin Fu is really weird. I don't, kind of weird how it works. But, pin Fu doesn't get Fu on Sumo. So you get the base 20 Fu. And by the way, pin Fu is the only hand that you can get 20 Fu on, so if you see a 20 Fu hand, it is always going to be pin Fu. Or I guess the more accurate way is to say it is the other way, where if you have a Pinfu hand and you sumo, it's 20 fu. Pinfu, Menzen Pinfu is 20 fu on sumo and 30 fu on ron because you start at base 20 fu plus 10 fu from Menzen ron. Menzen ron gives you 10 fu, close ron, which is 30 fu. Okay, so this is very important. I'll draw 3 stars because, you know, Pinfu hand is the most common hand after Tanyao. So, very important rule. Chitoi. Chitoi is always 25 fu. This is just a rule. Chitoi is 25 fu. And then, oh, sorry. And then the other ones, other hands. If it's open, it's usually 30 fu. Probably shouldn't have wrote always. It's usually 30 fu. If it's closed, it's always usually 30 fu on sumo or 40 fu on ron. So why does ron have, again, 40 fu? Because of this, plus 10 fu from Menzen ron. If not pinfu. So pinfu ron is 30 fu anyways. So if someone runs you on pinfu, then it's always 30 fu. Or it is, but if it's not pinfu, it's usually going to, it's always actually going to be 40 fu or higher. Okay, what do I mean by usually? When there is no card involved, that gives you massive amounts of fu. Right? If there is a con, then we need to take a little bit more care in calculating the score. Alright, so more tricks on trying to count fu quickly. And this is probably the main slides that people came for. So Toi Toi is usually 40 fu, might be 50 fu if there are kan or multiple terminals or honors. Right? Okay, so terminal, multiple terminal honor anchor. So usually what I'm talking about here is I'm saying if there are things that are plus 8. We want to look for plus 8 when we're counting up Toi Toi. If you don't see any plus 8, it's probably 40 fu. If you do see a couple of plus 8s, it could be 50. So we need to count. If there's like a closed kan of a terminal honor, it could be over 50, but those are like exceptions to the rule. Usually doesn't happen. Okay, so when is Toi Toi not 40 fu and it's only 30 fu? If you actually calculate it out, remember that if it's 32 fu, it rounds up to 40 fu. So it needs to be either exactly 30 or below. So when is it exactly 30 or below? Starting from 20 fu. This is the only way you can build 30 fu exactly, right? Remember that every single block from Toi Toi needs to give you at least 2 fu, because that is the open middle tile amount of fu for a triplet. The pair can have no fu. So if the pair has 0 fu, then one of these anko can be up to a plus 4. One of this Kotsu can be a plus 4. One of these triplets. So that means either it's a terminal or honor triplet open, or a closed triplet. Generally, when you're going for Toi Toi, you tend to have at least one closed triplets. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why 30 fu Toi Toi is very rare. So yeah, you can see it needs to have exactly this combination for 30 fu. So it generally doesn't happen. So if you see any closed triplet or any terminal or honor triplet, and if you have more than one of them, right? Or let's say you have a closed terminal or honor triplet, then it is automatically 30 fu or higher. Okay. So what condition does it go over 40 fu, right? If it's 4, 4, 4, 4, 2, right? So what kind of hand would this be? If it's like closed, open terminal or honor, open terminal or honor, just to not introduce Sananko kind of thing, right? Those kind of really exceptional hands that have lots of fu, it's still 18 fu, right? Which is still 40 fu. It doesn't cross that threshold of being 50 fu. So, in order to get a 50 fu hand, you absolutely need to have at least one, if not two or more, +8 or higher. So if you don't see any +8, don't even bother. It's probably 40 fu. Okay. Tip number 2, and this is probably the more general tip. Don't bother doing full score calculations, okay? You do not care if it's 12 fu. By the way, from now on, I'm gonna like kind of discount the base fu. You kind of tack on the base fu later on, when you're doing the fee, when you're doing the calculation. But yeah, you don't really care if it's 12 fu hand or a 18 fu hand or 20 fu hand, right? They all round up to 20 fu in the end, right? So if you just see that, hey, you have a +8, right? Let's say you have a +8 fu, and then you kind of see that the rest of the hand doesn't really have much fu, just call it a day. You don't really need to know that it's 16 fu, or you don't really need to know that it's 14 fu exactly. If it's +8, you can see there's another source of fu somewhere out there, but you can see that it doesn't really have all that much fu. Just say it's 40 fu, move on, right? We do not need to really be precise. Another example is if you have a terminal or an honor closed Khan is a closed Khan, that's +32. If you want to go to the next fu threshold, you need to have more than +8, right? So check for a +8. If they don't have a +8, don't even bother. It's 70 fu. Okay? So this is my example of well, it's 60 fu actually, right? 60 fu or 70 fu depending on if it's a closed run or a open run or whatever. But basically, don't just check up to the next threshold and don't bother counting more than that. Okay. And then third tip that I'm gonna say that might not be too obvious why we do this, but it will become obvious later on. Treat a bad weight sumo as +4 fu, and I've mentioned parity over here, and by parity what I mean is, remember previously I did say, everything, all these triplets are multiples of 4. We want to count the multiples of 2 later on, because it kind of breaks the parity, and multiples of 4 are very easy to count, as I'll demonstrate quite later on, a little bit later on. So we want to count everything in terms of multiples of 4, and if you remember, a bad weight, and by bad weight I mean everything that isn't a shampon or a yanmen, a bad weight is +2 fu, and a sumo is +2 fu. Right? So we combine these and we treat these as machi is +2 fu, and sumo is +2 fu, and we treat this as a +4 fu in total in order to preserve parity. All right, so let's do some quick examples, right? All right, scrub some random logs, throne room logs. But how can we calculate the fu here, right? What is the fu? Firstly, we need to see if is it closed or is it open. So we can see that it's a closed hand. So automatically, what do we default to? It is, well, firstly, is it pin fu? Answer is no. Therefore, it's not 30 fu, right? So, how a closed hand is then what? It is 20 fu base plus 10 for Menzenron, right? So we're gonna have 30 fu on Ron. And then 20 fu on Sumo. Right? But if you Sumo, it's going to be +2, right? So basically, it's going to be 30 fu on Sumo and 40 fu on Ron, usually. Because it's not Pinfu. Sorry, I explained this pretty badly. Really should have a script for this, okay? But basically, if it's closed, it's generally 30 fu on Sumo or 40 fu on Ron. I mentioned that right over generally here, right? Shortcuts. Yep, so if it's closed, it's 30 fu on Sumo, 40 fu on Ron. All we need to observe is whether or not we go over the next threshold, right? So the initial threshold is always 30 fu on Sumo, 40 fu on Ron. We need to count if it goes over 10 fu. And that's all we need to count. And then just by very eyeball estimate, we can see an Anko of 6 man and the Kanchan, right? So this is not a terminal or honor. So we're going to treat this as 4 fu, or it is 4 fu. And then this Kanchan weight is 2 fu, but we don't want to work in multiples of 2. We want to work in multiples of 4. And we say that it is 4 fu on a Sumo, right? Bad weight Sumo is 4 fu. 4 plus 4 is not enough. We don't even care if it's 8 or not. All we know is that it doesn't go over 10. So because it doesn't go over 10, we know that it is 30 fu on Sumo and 40 fu on Ron. It doesn't go over 10. All we need to check is, does it go over 10? And by the way, the reason why I say parity is important, or the parity is very useful, is because when is the first threshold where it does go over 10? Remember, if it's plus 10 exactly, it doesn't go over. It doesn't round up to the next value. It needs to be minimum plus 12. And minimum plus 12 is usually achieved by a plus 4, plus 4, plus 4. Or a plus 8, plus 4. And these are the only things we're looking for in order to look for the next threshold. When does it go over 20 fu? Well, over 20 fu is 4 times 5 is 20 fu, right? So it needs to have 5 different plus 4s. And remember, we're just going to treat a plus 8 as 2 of them. It needs to have 5 different plus 4s and then a bit extra. And that's all how we're going to count when it comes to going over thresholds. Remember, tip number 2, right, was don't bother doing full calculations, just check up to the next threshold. And this is how we're going to check. We're going to count in multiples of 4. If you have 3 multiples of 4, that goes to the next threshold. If you have a bit more than 5, if you have anything more than 5 exactly is 20 fu still. It is only 1 threshold over. But if it's more than 5, that's the next threshold. So as you can see, bad weight Sumo, and a plus 4 over here is only 2. That doesn't go over the threshold. All right, next one. Next one, we have how are we gonna read this, right? All right. Again, as you can see, this is a closed hand. So, and then we have a Champon weight over here, right? So remember, the Champon weight itself doesn't give you any fu. What matters is what sort of triplet block you make out of it. Whoops. Okay. And then how are we going to do that? Well, we see we have a plus 4, 1 plus 4 over here, and then this one over here. The 9 so's. If this forms a triplet, if it's closed, it's a plus 8. If it's open, it's a plus 4. This one, we don't care. It's either plus 4 or less. You get the idea? So, if it's closed, right? So if we're winning off the 6 pin, if we're winning off the 6 pin, then what do we have? We have 1 plus 4, 1 plus 4 or less, which is less than 10 fu. So as we said, it is going to be 30 fu on sumo, 30 fu on sumo or ron, 30 fu if on 6-pin. 6-pin. It's always going to be 30 fu because this, no matter if it's closed or open, is less than 4 fu, right? However, the 9-so is a little bit more interesting because 9-so sumo gives you a closed 6-so, closed 9-so, which is a closed terminal or honor. So this one gives us +8. So a +4 and a +8 is actually crosses that threshold. Remember, we need 3 +4s. This and a +8 counts as 2 of them. So this in fact is 40 fu. 40 fu. 40 fu on sumo. And again, on open, it is still 40 fu because it's a +4 and a +4. So it's 40 fu on sumo and ron. 6-pin is 30 fu on sumo and 40 fu on ron. Alright. Everyone hang in there? Everything makes sense? So the idea I want to sort of present to people is always just try to count everything on a +4 basis, right? +4, +4, 2 +4s, not enough. +4 and a +8, next threshold. It's usually 30 fu on sumo, but because it crossed one threshold, it is now 40 fu. That's the sort of counting style that I want to encourage people. It's very quick and easy to do, usually. Alright, so last one. Last one. What do I observe? Okay, so I see this is an open hand, right? This is an open hand. Open hand is 30 fu on ron. Or just anything, right? 30 fu usually. This is what I have in mind. I just need to see if it crosses the next threshold. What configuration crosses the next threshold over here? Well, the weight here is 2-man, 3-man, right? 2-man or 3-man. And I can see that if I get 2-man, I'm left with a +8 and a +8. A +8 definitely crosses that threshold. So it's 40 fu on 2-man. What about on the 3-man? Well, 3-man becomes a penchan, which is fuck all fu. And then this is a +8, right? A +8 and a +8 and a fuck all, aka a +2 because it's a bad weight, is still +10, which doesn't cross that threshold. Open hand is base 20, and the +10 is exactly 30 fu. It doesn't round to the next threshold of 40 fu. So 3-man is 30 fu on ron, 2-man is 40 fu. Alright. Everyone good so far? One last example. Again, and then one toy example, because I did mention toy. So, what did I say? I said that if you don't have a +8 on a toy, don't even bother. It is physically impossible for you to get. It is physically impossible for you to get 50 fu if you don't have a +8. And you can see over here, this is a +4. This over here is a +4. This is a +2. And no matter what happens over here, and I chose this weight specifically, right? Because a pei sumo would be +8, right? A pei sumo would be +8, and then a 6-pin would be a +4 or a +2. Right? So, if it doesn't have a +8, we pretty much know it's 40 fu, right? We have multiple +4s, we know that is 40 fu. So the only thing we need to consider is the pay sumo condition, which is a +8. And then all we need to decide is that we have a +8. Sumo is going to give us 2 fu. So let's group these to 10. 10 fu does 4, 4, and 2 over here. Remember, we're not going to get fu from the 6 pin anymore. 4, 4, and 2. Does that give us the next threshold? No, because that is exactly +20. You can see that it doesn't cross the next threshold up to +22, which gives us 50 fu. So even on a pay sumo that gives us a +8, you can see that it doesn't cross over 40 fu into 50 fu. So you can see that Toy Toy getting 50 fu even on a Toy Toy hand is actually fairly difficult, especially, and this is a fairly standard Toy Toy hand where you have like a Honor Shampon and 1 Anko, and you've paired a Yakuhai, right? You pawned the Yakuhai. I chose this example specifically because this is probably the most common type of Toy Toy you're going to have, and you can see that it is still not 50 fu, right? So yeah, most Toy Toy hands are 40 fu. All you need to worry about is if you have a +8. And then you check if it's 50 fu. You can see that this one does not. So it's 40 fu on Ron or Sumo. Alright. So we talked about how to calculate fu. Now we need to use that fu that we calculate for the hand to calculate the score. So, these numbers over here on the scoring table, these numbers are not generated randomly. Unfortunately, these are not random number generated, and we just decided to use the scoring table. This is all based on a formula, and the formula is you multiply your fu by 2 to the power of 4 plus han, and then you round that up to the nearest 100. You're always rounding up. And then if you're dealer, your score is multiplied by 1.5. So just running through a couple of examples, honestly not too important, but you can see if you have a 2 han 40 fu hand, plug and chug into the formula, you get 2,600, which on a 2 han 40 fu non-dealer, you can see that it is 2,600. Or a more exotic score, a 2 han 70 fu as dealer, you can see, plug and chug into formula, you get 6,800, which you can see is over here, 6,800 on Ron. Normally, there's a lot of ways to express this formula. It's technically like 2 to the power of 2 plus Han that gives you the base sumo value, and then you double it twice in order to get the Ron value. But you calculate the Ron value and then dividing it is generally a lot easier because you run like half the time anyways. So I just wrote the formula like this. Okay, so if you stare at the formula long enough, we can see that for every Han increase, it doubles our score, right? So if we increase this part over here, you can see that we're basically multiplying by 2 one more time. That's like sort of how powers work. You multiply by 2 that many number of times, so you're multiplying by 2 one more time if you increase your number of Han. And then you also notice that if you double your fu, if you have 2 times the fu, that's the same as having 1 more Han, right? Because you're basically you're multiplying by 2. You're multiplying this part by 2 one more time. So mathematically, having double the fu is exactly equal to being 1 more Han up with half the fu. And this point over here, we are absolutely going to use and abuse. So this is extremely important. This is pretty much how we're going to calculate most of our scores, actually. Okay, so again, we need to cover the exception case, which is Chitoy. Chitoy is always 25 fu. How do we memorize 25 fu? I just like to say that it is just always a power of 2, starting from 1600. So if you know your powers of 2, it's 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. And it's basically this thing over here. And it goes up from there. Remember, Han doubles our score. So 2 Han 25 through is 1600. 3 Han 25 is 32. 4 Han 25 is 64. Pretty simple stuff. If you forget which power of 2, 2 Han 25 through is, all you need to know is that 1 Han is roughly 1000 points. It is in fact 1000 points exactly at 30 through. And 2 Han is 2000 points, right? So if you check, these are both 30 through that I'm talking about. So if you check that, 2 Han 25 through should be somewhere in between these 2 points, right? Because it should be less than 2 Han 30 through, and it should be greater than 1 Han 30 through. So you can see 2 Han 25 through should be somewhere in between. So it is 16. We're starting from the 16 on the power of 2. If you're dealer, you multiply it by 1.5, or if you don't want to do the mental math, you can just start from 2400 and then double. One neat trick you can do is, let's say you have 3 Han 25 through as dealer. You can actually add the 3 Han 25 through as non-dealer and the one before. So 3 Han 25 through as dealer would be 3200 plus 1600, which is equal to 4800. 4 Han 25 through would be 6400 plus 32, which is 9600. You could do it like that if you want. Whichever way is most convenient for you. I just like to start at 2400 and double. Okay. Alright, so, and this is where I'm gonna list a whole bunch of ways we're going to learn our scoring table. It's in fact just rehashing this single trick over here. Remember I said this is very important. We're just going to say that we're gonna half our foo and increase our harm by 1. And we're just gonna rehash that thing over and over and over again. So all we need to do is we're gonna start at the 33 line. And this is the one line that I sort of you have to know your 30 foo line. 30 foo is the most common value in the first place. 30 foo is the most common value in the first place. So it's really nice to just have it right there up your sleeve so that you can whip it out when you need the 30 foo. But we're gonna pretty much base everything off the 30 foo line. So I do encourage people, you know, at least know these 4 numbers over here. They're really simple. You just start at 1000 on the 1 Han. You kind of keep doubling as you go. It's a little bit inaccurate because of rounding issues. So just remember these 4 numbers really. 1000, 2000 should be simple enough. All you need to remember is 3900 and 7700. I feel like these 2 numbers you've probably seen a lot of times in your games already, so these numbers should be very familiar to you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply the trick. What trick? Double the foo. Double foo. Half Han. Subtract 1. Subtract 1 Han. So 1 Han 60 foo is then the same as 2 Han 30 foo. Right? Double the foo from 30 to 60. 1 less Han is, so that is 1 Han 60 foo is 2000 points. 2 Han 60 foo is the same as 3 Han 30 foo, which we said is 3900. And 3 Han 60 foo is the same as 4 Han 30 foo, which is 7700. So that's how we are going to know our 60 foo numbers. 50 foo. How are we going to know that our 50 foo? Well, we already mentioned the Cheetoy lines, right? It is powers of 2. So you start at 1600, 3200, and 6400. And then we, again, double the fu, subtract 1 han. 1 han 50 fu is 2 han 25 fu, which is 1600. 2 han 50 fu is 3 han 25 fu, which is 3200. 3 han 50 fu is 4 han 25 fu, which is 6400. Alright, so we've covered 50 fu, we've covered 60 fu, we've covered 30 fu. So we need to know 40 and 20. 40 and 20 is a little bit... we're going to do something a little bit different. Going back to our scoring sort of formula. Let's say we increase the fu by 10 in the formula. So we're going up to the next fu threshold. If we sub it in at 1 han, okay, if we sub in for 1 han, you can see that it comes out as 320 without rounding. We're gonna drop the rounding because remember all the other point values are rounded. So a 1000 point is actually something like 960 points or something like that. That got rounded up to 1000. So these 20 points sort of feed into the deficiency of the original points. So we're gonna drop the 20 part of it. And then we can see that whenever we are at the 1 han line, whenever we go up 10 fu, we're all actually just going to be adding 300 points each time. Right? And remember that every time we increase our han, it's a multiplication by 2. So from 320, it goes to 640, which we round to 600. Round down in this case. And then at 3 han, 640 becomes 1280. So the increases are somewhere like 1300 at 3 han. So just remember 300, 600, and 1300 at 3 han, and then we can move on to the rest of the scores. So starting at the 30 fu line again, 1000, 2000, 3900, and 7700, we're going to add our increases. So in order to go from 30 fu to 40 fu, what are we going to do? We're going to add 300. We're going to add 600. We're going to add 1300. And we don't care, 4 fu. Okay, so apply addition trick to the 40 fu. If we add 300, we get 1300 for 140 fu. 2000 add 600, we get 2600 for 240 fu. 3900 adding 1300 is 5200 for 340 fu. Very simple stuff. How do we calculate the 20 fu line? Well, again, the halving han and then add the fu, or you double the fu and then subtract the han. You can do either way. They're mathematically equivalent. So 1 han 40 fu is the same as 2 han 20 fu. 2 han 40 fu is the same as 3 han 20 fu. 3 han 40 fu is the same as 4 han 20 fu. Alright. Okay, how do we calculate our points when we need to sumo? We just halve our RON value and then halve it again for dealer and non-dealer values. Very simple stuff. So, 1 han 90 fu. So, what the heck is 1 han 90 fu? Well, I didn't mention 1 han 90 fu yet, but we're gonna actually utilize all our tricks that we learned so far and say, okay, well, I know that, I know. So how can we get to 90 fu as high as possible? Well, let's start from the 30 fu line, right? We start from the 30 fu line that we know, and then we say 2 han 30 fu. 2 han 30 fu is 2000 points, right? And then you subtract the han, double the fu, and then you get 1 han 60 fu, which is 2000 points. Remember, this is the same as. And then we need to increase the fu by twice. So we add 300 Oh, sorry, not twice, 3 times. We had 303 times, right? In order to go from 60 fu to 90 fu. And then you get 230 fu, which is the same as 160 fu, plus 900 points, which is 2,900 points. Sounds a little bit confusing. Honestly, what I'd do is memorize the 30 fu line and the 40 fu line. And then I'd just go from 240 fu, right? So if I wanted 190 fu, I'd do 240 fu. It's the same as 180 fu, which is 2,600, and then add 300 points for the next one. Okay, so we established that 2,900 is our run value on 190 fu. How do we calculate our sumo values? Easy, we just divide by 2, and then round up for 1,500. And we divide by 2 and divide this by 2, and round up for 800 points. Easy way to do this. If it's an odd number, what you can do is you just add 100 real quick so that to make it an even number, and then divide by 2, which gives you quicker calculations. So could be easier depending on who you ask. So you can do it that way. So yeah, that's how you calculate sumo value, and you can see 800, 1,500 for 190 fu. Oh, we don't have it, but it is correct. Usually you will not get the 90 fu. Get all the way up to 90 fu. Doesn't happen very often, if at all. Okay, we need to talk about dealer points. Dealer points is a little bit more annoying. Again, I just recommend you learn your 30 and 40 fu lines. For dealer, you start from 15. So you start at non-dealer 130, which is 1,000 points, right? And then you multiply that by 1.5 to get 1,500. For 130, 130 as dealer, and then kind of keep going on to double it, and then you have a rough estimate. I do want to emphasize though that these are rough estimates. It's not exact because of rounding, but doubling 1,500 is 3,000, and I know that dealer points, there is a 2,900 score. So I know that 2,900 is dealer 230. And then doubling this score gives you 5,800 for dealer 330. And then doubling this score gives you 11,600, which is dealer 430. So yeah, you just need to mind the rounding. I do encourage you to memorize the 30 fu lines. As I said, it is very quick, and the most frequent score that happens is the 30 fu line, so you should memorize 30 fu lines. For dealer, I'd just also recommend knowing the 40 fu as well. 40 fu from 1,500 I know is 2,000. 240 fu is 3,900. 340 for dealer is a cool one because it's 7,700. And then 440 is Mangan. Alright, so once you know your 30 and 40 fu, you can use the doubling fu and adding han, or, doubling fu, subtracting han, or halving fu and adding han, right, in order to get all these values over here. So you can get 20 fu by halving 40 fu. You can get 50 fu by Chitoi and then multiplying by 2. You can get 100 fu by getting the 50 fu and then multiplying it that way. You can get 60 fu by multiplying 30 fu. You can get 80 fu by doubling 40 fu. So that's how you get those numbers. And then use the addition trick for the rest of the numbers. So if you want to know 70 fu, you go from 60 fu, and then you add 500 points for 1 han or 1000 points for 2 han. 3 han 70 fu is Mangan, so we don't care. Again, 90 fu, same thing. Start from 80, add these points for 90 fu. 110 fu is 100, and then add these points. So if you can't remember that is 500 points and 1000 points, you can always just go back to your 30 fu and 40 fu and then subtract them from each other, and then you get how much it sort of increases by for that Han level. And then for Sumo is actually really cool. You can actually take the non-dealer Sumo value and then take the dealer value for the non-dealer Sumo value. So if you have 340 fu Sumo, 340 fu as non-dealer, 340 fu as non-dealer is 5,200. Right? So remember it's 3,900 for the base 30 fu plus 1,300, which gives you 5,200. And then you divide it by 2 for the dealer value, right? And that you just take from all. So you take the dealer value from everyone, and that is your dealer Sumo value. So it's 2/6 all. Okay. Any questions so far? This is pretty much the end of all the scoring stuff. And then I have like 2 quizzes. Anyone? All clear? It's a little bit difficult to start out with, but try some of this yourself, and then try if you try some of this yourself and then try in-game, you'll definitely get the hang of it after doing it for a couple of hands. Okay. Alright, so practice. These are slightly difficult, so I'll give you guys 30 seconds. It shouldn't take too long. I'll give you guys a minute. I'll give you guys I'll give you guys 1 minute to do these. Oh. I forgot I'm actually showing the display. And everyone have answers they're gonna lock in? Alright. Hopefully everyone has an answer. Alright, so this is combination of fu counting and scoring. We can see firstly we have 1, right? So it's 1 han. And then if we win off this, then it's going to be 2 han. So it's 1 to 2 han. And then we need to calculate our fu. Oh, and there's also chanta, right? For chanta. Open chanta is 1 han for 3 han. 2 to 3 han. Depending on if we win off 1 pin or the ton. Okay, so, and then we're gonna do, again, we're gonna group things in multiples of 4. This is actually quite easy because no matter if we win off the 1 pin or the ton, it's always going to be 4 han. So this is 4, 4, 4. Again, 4, 4, 4 meets our threshold. We don't really care if anything else has fu or not, because this is already plus 12, which crosses the threshold up to 40 fu territory. So this is always going to be 2 han 40 or 3 han 40, depending on if we get the ton or not. Okay, so 240 as non-dealer this time around. Again, so we start from 2,000 points at 200. We add 600 to make it 300. 300. Sorry, this is 30 fu. And then we add 600 to make it 40 fu. So this is 2,600 points for 200. And then for 340, we start at 3,900. We add 1,300 to get 5,200. So this will be our RON values. On Sumo, what are we gonna do? We're gonna divide this by 2 and divide by this by 2 again to get 1,300 and 700. Again, we round up. What about this? We get 2,600 and 1,300. So this will be our RON value. So this is ton Sumo. And this is 1 pin Sumo. And then the RON values are 2,600 and 5,200. 52,000, yeah. Alright. Next one. Bit more interesting. This one is quite tricky. For those of you who don't know, the Dora for this is Chun. So this isn't Dora. Alright, this one is quite tricky. I will give you guys up to the time it takes for me to calculate it, and then some more. Okay. I'll give you guys another minute. Alright, do everyone have an answer, or do we need more time? So just for reference, during live games, you absolutely want to know your score. So just going back to our previous slide, you notice that I've calculated all the possibilities on, hey, on this on ton run, I'm gonna do 5,200. On 1 pin run, I'm gonna do 2,600. And then on Sumo, these are the values I'm gonna call. You need to do this before you win. I just want to make that very clear. If you are doing the scores live after you win, you're gonna be really slow. You need to already know your score before you win, basically. So you need to do this while before you win, while other people are discarding. You shouldn't really be doing it right after you win. We are in fact dealer over here on the other one. Alright, looks like people are starting to roll the answer again, one answer for one situation is not enough. You need to know all answers for all kinds of wins. So 1-man Ron, 9-man Ron, 1-man sumo, 9-man sumo. Thankfully, this time around, I wasn't too mean, and 1-man and 9-man is exactly equivalent. No takame yasume. So you just need to calculate one value, one sumo and one Ron value. All right, we will start the explanation soon. First, we calculate our han. Okay, so what do we have? We have haku, haku chanta. Fun hands. Both hands are chanta because I want to include a lot of terminal honors stuff. All right, so haku chanta for 2 han. Great, lovely. No takame yasume. We don't need to do 2 to 3 han kind of thing. Okay, now we need to calculate fu. We have +4, +8, in which we treat this as 4 times 2. And this is either a +8 or a +4, right? +4 on Ron, +8 on Sumo. What do we do? If it's a +8, so on Sumo, it's a 8, 8, 4. And if you notice, right, if you treat this as 4 times 2, this is the threshold where I said that it crosses over to the next threshold, right? So it's 2, 2, 1 for 5 times 4, which is 20. So once we're at 20, we need to figure out if you have extra sources of fu, and in this case, we do in fact have an extra source of fu. We get +2 on Sumo. Right? So we get +2 on Sumo to leapfrog us into the next threshold. So this is in fact 50 fu on Sumo and 40 fu on Ron. Right? Alright, so 2 han 50, 2 han 50, or 2 han 40. Now we need to calculate the scores for this. As I said, dealer 2 han 40. I encourage you to just keep this one memorized, but if you don't want to memorize it, it's like 3,000, roughly 3,000, which for 30 fu. So it's 2,900 is the actual value. And then 40 fu is plus 1,000 from here to make it 3,900 points. Alright, what about 50 fu? 50 fu, you might be tempted to just do another plus 1,000 from here, but this may or may not be actually accurate. We want to use the addition trick as a last resort. Okay, so 50 fu, you want to be more accurate and do it from the 25 fu line. Right, so 25 fu, I said 2 han, 3 han 25 fu is what we need, right? Because we're gonna double the fu and then subtract the han by 1 to get 2 han 50 fu. So 3 han 25 fu is, starting from the base of 24,000, we multiply by 2 to get 48,000. And this is the same as our 2 han 50 fu sumo. Okay, yeah, but sumo value, we need to actually calculate the sumo value, right? We can just divide by 3 here if you want, and just say it's 1,600. 1,600 all on sumo. Or, as I said, we really should have just done the non-dealer value of 2 han 50 fu, which is 325 fu non-dealer, which is 32, power of 10, right? 00, divided by 2 to get the dealer sumo value of 1,600 points. So it is 1,600 all on sumo, or it is 3,900 Ron. Alright. So that is the answer, and that should be doable in 20 seconds or less. 20 seconds or less. I'd say is a good benchmark. All right. So yeah, that is all for the slides. All right. Gonna end the recording here. Any questions people want to ask before we end off? Clapping soundboard. All right, I will end the recording then.